today's video, I'm going to be exploring some big songs that I bet you didn't know were all cover versions, taking in all different genres of music from pop, rock and hip hop. Let's start off with a track that's been sampled hundreds of different times, Apache by the incredible Bongo Band. Now that's been sampled by people such as the Sugarhill Gang, Nas and even Grandmaster Flash, but it's actually a cover version of a track by the Shadows, who were the backing band for Cliff Richard in the 50s and 60s. Let's have a check at their original version. This next one was made famous by featuring in the 1994 Quentin Tarantino film Pulp Fiction. Let's have a listen to it. Now the original version that this was based on was first recorded in 1930. Its title is Mizelu, which translates into English as Egyptian Girl. It's possible the actual song is older, but this is the first known recorded version of it. Let's take a listen. Up next is a track that was a huge worldwide hit when it was first released in 1981 and it sold over 1.3 million copies in the UK alone. Let's have a check.
Oh, tainted love.
Soft Cell consisted of Marc on vocals and David Ball on keyboards. Tainted Love was first recorded in 1965 by Gloria Jones. Let's have a listen to her original version of it.
Oh, tainted love.
This next one was made famous by being sampled by Run DMC on the 1986 track Peter Piper, but I bet you didn't know it was actually a cover version. Let's hear a sample from the Bob James instrumental cover version. Bob James is one of the most sampled musicians ever and is hugely popular in hip hop tracks. The original version was written and performed by Paul Simon in 1973. Let's have a listen to it.
And there's music in the street both night and day.
This next song is a country music worldwide hit made famous by Johnny Cash. It stayed at the #1 spot on the country chart for 7 weeks when it was released in 1963. It's been listed by Rolling Stone magazine as the greatest country song of all time. I am of course talking about Ring of Fire. Let's take a listen.
I fell into a burning ring of fire.
The original version was recorded by Anita Carter in 1962. Her sister June Carter wrote the song along with Merle Kilgore. Johnny Cash ended up marrying June Carter in 1968. Let's hear the original version of the song.
I fell into the burning ring of fire.
Sticking with the 1960s for this next song that has had several cover versions recorded. I Heard It Through the Grapevine by Marvin Gaye hit the #1 spot in the UK when it was first released in 1968. A lot of people won't be aware though that this was actually not the first version. Let's have a listen to his version first. Now the original version of this was released the previous year by Gladys Knight and the Pips on Motown Records and was Motown's biggest selling single up to that point. In the UK though, it didn't even enter the top 40. Although it was the first version to be released, the Miracles were actually the first group to record it, but it was the third version to actually get a release. Let's have a check of the first release version of the song. Let's jump forward to the 80s now with another huge hit that was in the top 10 in over 25 different countries at the time. It sold over 6 million copies in the US alone. Girls Just Want to Have Fun by Cyndi Lauper was her first major single from her debut album in 1983. Let's have a listen to it. The original version is very different sounding. It was recorded 4 years earlier in 1979 and is more of a rock song and is also a lot faster. Let's hear that original version now.
Girls just wanna have fun. Yeah, girls just wanna have fun.
to the 60s for this next one, and I bet a lot of you didn't know this was a cover version. Respect by Aretha Franklin. The song earned her 2 Grammy Awards in 1968, and in 2021, Rolling Stone magazine placed it as #1 on their greatest songs of all time list. It helped turn her into a worldwide star. Let's have a listen to her version of it.
R-E-S-P-C-T, find out what it means to me.
The original version was written and released in 1965 by Otis Redding and had some different lyrics in parts. He did have success with it, but nowhere near the level of Aretha Franklin. Let's hear his original version.
What you want, honey, you got it.
This next song by Whitney Houston spent 14 weeks at the top of the US Billboard Hot 100, which was a record at the time. It also earned her 2 Grammy Awards in 1994. It has sold over 10 million copies in the US alone and featured on the soundtrack to The Bodyguard. Let's take a listen to her cover version of the song. Now, the original version was written and recorded in 1972 by Dolly Parton. She also wrote her other famous hit, Jolene, on the same day.
You wrote the song. How long ago?
In 1972. At the same time I wrote Jolene. That was a good writing day. I said, boy, what was you taking? That was a good writing day. But it was.
That's a pretty good songwriting day for anyone. Let's hear her original country version of the song. This next song from 1966 is probably one of the most famous tracks by Jimi Hendrix. I'm talking about Hey Joe. It was also the very last song to be played at the Woodstock Festival in 1969 in front of a crowd of 80,000 people. Let's take a listen.
Hey, Joe.
Now, the origins of the original are up for debate. It was first registered for copyright in 1962 by Billy Roberts. Many say it's based on a much older song, so who knows. Anyway, let's take a listen to the 1962 version by Billy Roberts.
Hey, Joe. Where are you going with the gun in your hand?
So there we have it, some huge songs that I bet you didn't know were all cover versions. I'm going to leave you with a short clip from an amazing instrumental cover version of a 50 Cent track that came out in 2008. Drop a comment with your thoughts and subscribe to see more. As always, thanks for watching.